Good evening, once again, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank you, as always, for coming back to the channel. It is a pleasure to have you here. In my continued efforts to experiment with the content on the channel, today, Sunday night football between the Minnesota Vikings and the Denver Broncos just finished, and I wanted to take a moment to try and predict the rest of the NFL season. And for those of you who may be watching that do not quite understand how the NFL works, to basically summarize, there are 7 weeks left of regular season play, and then we will get into the playoffs, and I'll explain a little bit more about that as we go. So, our first matchup here is between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, both of these teams were in the Super Bowl last year. This is a rematch between those two teams. As you can see, both teams are currently leading the respective division. Conference, I think, is the correct term, actually. So the Chiefs are 7-2, and the Eagles are 8-1. They only have one loss on the season, and I believe it was to the New York Jets a couple weeks ago. But I think it's a really hard choice because they're both very good teams. But I think the Eagles will take the victory. They lost in the Super Bowl last year. I think they have the better O-line. I think they have the better D-line. I think they're healthier. I can't think of any significant injuries on their team right now. I think the Eagles should win this game. I think it will be close, though. I think it should be within a score or two. So, into Week 12, we have some interesting matchups here. We have the Miami Dolphins and the New York Jets. This one's not too difficult to me. I'm picking the Dolphins. The Jets just do not have, they don't have a quarterback, and quarterback is the most important position. By far, you cannot win in the NFL if you don't have a good quarterback. Unfortunately, Aaron Rodgers had a season-ending injury earlier in the year, Week 1. So they've had to go back to Zach Wilson, and it's a lot of weight to put on a guy. And part of me does feel bad for him, but Zach Wilson is just not the answer. I think the Dolphins take it. Next, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Cincinnati Bengals. In a very similar scenario, the Cincinnati Bengals just lost their franchise quarterback, Joe Burrow, to a season-ending injury to his throwing hand. He tore a ligament in his thumb. And I think the Pittsburgh defense is stepping up. I'm not too sold on their quarterback either. But their defense, I think, will be enough for them to beat the backup in Cincinnati. I don't think it'll be a pretty game. I think it'll be a pretty ugly win for the Steelers, but the Steelers nonetheless. This game here, between the Houston Texans and the Jacksonville Jaguars, I expect to actually be really good. Both of these teams are on the upswing lately. They've been really bad. They've been some of the worst teams in the league for a while. The Texans did make the playoffs for a couple years in a row there for a little bit. The Jaguars had a run back in 2017. But between the two of them, and I am going to be a little bit biased here, I think C.J. Stroud, the quarterback for the Texans, has been playing a little bit better than Trevor Lawrence for the Jaguars. So I'm going to pick the Texans, and it is also at home for the Texans. So on the right side here, you can see it says is the home team, and there is a little bit of an advantage there depending on where you are. Up next, we have the Cleveland Browns versus the Denver Broncos. Both of these teams are very defensive focused, and the Browns also, just this past week, lost their quarterback as well to a season-ending injury. So this should be, this should be more of a defensive battle, and I think in that regard I give it to Cleveland. Denver tonight, I have a lot of questions about that offense. They have won 4 in a row now, and they are at home, but still, I need to see more on the offensive side of things from Denver. I'm taking the Chiefs over the Raiders. I don't think the Raiders are very good. I think they have a lot of problems with both their offense and their defense. I do like their new coach, Alec Pierce. I think his name is. I think it's Alec Pierce, but I've liked so far. They've won a couple games in a row now since firing their previous coach. Well, actually, I take that. They did just lose to the Dolphins this week, but before that, they won a couple games. And now, I think their schedule just gets kind of tough. So I'm going to take the Chiefs there. Same thing here with the Los Angeles Chargers. I'm taking the Baltimore Ravens. I think they're the better team. Better defense, better quarterback. The Chargers are more banged up too. They've got a lot of injuries across their offense and their defense. So, goodness golly. Anyways, I'm taking Baltimore in that matchup. So, moving on, we have 2 teams that are currently competing, as you can see down here, for the number 1 overall pick. The Giants are at 5, the Patriots are at 3. Both of these teams are not very good. The Patriots, their quarterback is apparently in a lot of hot water with the locker room. He's having trouble leading the team. There's rumors that the coach is going to leave. All kinds of stuff going on there. Oh, excuse me. The Giants, I don't know about the Giants. The Giants, I can't really think of anything on that team that I like. Saquon Barkley, I guess, the running back. They have a good tackle on the left side. Other than that, I don't know, it's tough. I think I'm going to give it to the Giants just because they're at home. But I don't feel too confident again about that. Here's another match that, it's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Indianapolis Colts. Neither team is really performing too hot right now. They're kind of streaky. They're kind of hit or miss. I think for this one, I'm just going to take the Bucs because I like Baker Mayfield, the quarterback for the Bucs. I am a Baker Mayfield fan. I feel like he was done super dirty by Cleveland. The defense for Indy is pretty good. It's my list, my predictions. So I'm gonna take Tampa Bay because I like Baker Mayfield better than Gardner Minshew on the Colts. The next pick here is another one that is so terrible. It's the 1-9 Carolina Panthers versus the 3-7 Tennessee Titans. I think the Titans are a better team. Like, not by a lot, but definitely in this scenario where they play probably the worst team in the league. So, don't think that's too difficult. Moving on, we have the Eagles and the Bills. I'm taking the Eagles because I am still not convinced that the Buffalo Bills can beat an actual NFL team. Like, they've won a couple games. They beat the Dolphins. I can't remember who else they've beaten, but they're 6-6. I have a lot of questions offensively with that team. I think they're pretty narrow at wide receiver. They have a lot of injuries defensively. Their secondary is basically non-existent anymore because a lot of their star players on that side got hurt. So I think the Eagles will take care of business there. I think it's a pretty easy win for them. And then over here in the NFC, now I'm going to have a controversial pick here. A lot of people might disagree with me, but I'm actually going to take the Packers over the Lions. Mainly because the thing with the Lions, right, like, they have looked really bad at points. Like, really, really awful at points this season, despite having an 8-2 record. They played Baltimore a couple weeks ago, and they just couldn't do anything. Their offense could get started. They don't have a defense. That is the biggest thing with the Lions that sort of prevents me from thinking that they're going to do anything. They just do not have a defense that can stop anybody. Like, even the Bears, just this week, the Bears really kind of shot themselves in the foot. They were leading. They had like 4 minutes left. They could have won the game, and then just a bunch of horrendous decisions to close out the game. So I think the Packers, they just came off of a nail biter against the Chargers, and part of that could just be that, you know, the Chargers head coach is out of his head, and, you know, made some poor decisions. But I think after a win like that, they moved to 4-6. You know, they're closing in on a wild card spot in the playoffs. I think that kind of momentum might start to ramp up, so I'm taking the Packers there. Cowboys over the Commanders. Very easy choice. The Cowboys just completely outclassed the Commanders in every single way. You know, they have Micah Parsons, they have Trayvon Diggs, they have CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott, Tony Pollard's kind of having a down year, but who cares? So I think Cowboys easily win that game. The Seahawks versus the Niners is... The Seahawks is a difficult choice. They, let me see here. They beat the Commanders a couple weeks ago. They lost to the Rams this week. They had a good run earlier in the season. I think they have the potential to win this game. Are they going to? I'm going to pick them just because they're at home and they usually play well against their division. But I think it's one of my least confident picks so far. Saints, Falcons, both of them coming off of a bye. Falcons are at home. I don't trust the Falcons. I'm going to give it to the Saints. I think their defense is slightly better and their offensive weapons are used better. I don't know that they are better, but I think their coach is definitely better than the coach for Atlanta. So that is my choice there. For the Rams and the Cardinals, I am going to take the Los Angeles Rams despite all the injuries that they have. The Cardinals are barely even an NFL team. They're a lot like the Panthers in a way where it's just, you know, their roster from top to bottom is just lacking so many important positions. They did get their quarterback back. Say that a couple times fast. They got Kyler Murray back. And Kyler Murray did play decently well this week. Where are they? Against the Texans. But, you know, they still couldn't win. I'm going to take the Rams there. And then the Vikings versus the Bears. I'm taking the Vikings. The Bears are not a very good team either. The Bears have defensive issues. They have offensive issues. Their coach might get fired. I think the Vikings, especially if they get Justin Jefferson back, I think the Vikings are just the better team. You know, despite the slew of injuries that the Vikings are going through right now, I think they're just simply better than the Bears, and they are at home. They came off of a pretty bad loss, honestly, against the Broncos. They looked like the better team for most of that game, and then it came down to the last couple minutes and some bad choices, bad decisions, bad turnovers. Let Denver sneak away with that one, I think. But I think they will bounce back, and then they're going into their bye after this week, so I think they're going to be fine. Moving on now, we have Week 13. In Week 13, we have the Patriots versus the Chargers. I'm taking the Chargers solely because I don't think the Chargers are very good, honestly. Like, I'm not convinced by the Chargers, but solely because they have a significantly better quarterback than the Patriots. I'm taking the Chargers. I'm taking the Colts over the Titans. I think the Colts have a better defense. I think they have a better offensive line. I don't think they're spectacular or anything like that, but the Titans have a lot of work to do, I think, before I can really say that they're a team to be afraid of in the AFC. I'm taking the Texans over to the Broncos. Again, I have questions about the Broncos offense. I really do. The Texans defense isn't anything special, but they have CJ Stroud, who is very clearly going to win Rookie of the Year and might even be in the MVP conversation. The quarterback for the Texans is playing at such a high level, and I don't think you can discount that, especially because they're at home. I'm going to take the Texans. I'm also going to take the Jacksonville Jaguars at home against the Bengals team that doesn't have Joe Burrow anymore. The Bengals are just kind of, like they had some losses that were pretty bad, even with Joe Burrow. And without him, I think they're just sitting ducks. I think they're hopeless. So I think Jacksonville will probably just walk away with that. Miami over Washington. And I think this game will be closer than a lot of people think. I think it might even come down to the last play. The reasoning for that is because the Washington Commanders can sling the ball if they want to, right? Like if they're playing perfectly, they can do some damage. And we've seen that the Miami Dolphins have struggled in games where they're playing and the opponent is just sort of doing whatever they want. They do have Jalen Ramsey back, and he has been playing well. So I think that will help, but I think this game will honestly be very, very close. Anyway, Steelers over the Cardinals. Again, the Steelers might benefit the most from their schedule this year, going down the stretch here into the playoffs, because they play a lot of bad teams to finish off. I don't think their quarterback is very good. I don't think Najee Harris, I don't think their running back is very good. Their wide receivers, I have questions about. They did get their tight end, very, very good tight end. I do like Pat Freiermuth. They got him back off of injury, but it's one of those things where it's just I just think the Cardinals are not a very good team. The Jets versus the Falcons. I think the Jets defense, because the Jets defense is phenomenal. It might be one of the best defenses in the league. It's just their quarterback is not good. But the Jets defense, I think, will be enough to just completely squander any hopes that the Falcons have to beat them. Same thing here with the Browns versus the Rams. I think the Browns defense is just way too good for the Rams to overcome, especially because the Rams just lost Cooper Kupp. I don't know for how long. We haven't gotten that update yet at the time of recording this, or at least I haven't seen it, right? But I just don't believe the Rams can overcome the defense. Their O-line is pretty bad. I don't even know if Matt Stafford is healthy, their quarterback, so who knows. I think the Chiefs will beat the Green Bay Packers. I think this game might be closer than people expect too, but I think Patrick Mahomes is just way too good for the Packers to deal with, because their defense is kind of depleted. It's not what it was a couple years ago. There's some injuries there. There's some regression happening with them, but I think the Chiefs are significantly better than the Packers. So over here in the NFC again, I think the Cowboys are better than the Seahawks. I think this also will be a closer game than people expect it to be, but I do think Dallas is the better team, and I think they will win, especially at home. So I don't think that's too hard of a decision, despite the fact that I do believe I don't think it'll be like a shutout. Like, Dallas has shut a few teams out this year. So I don't think it'll be quite like that. The thing that sort of hinges on it is if Geno Smith, because Geno Smith, the quarterback for the Seahawks, did get injured this week, so depends on how he's doing, but I think the safe bet is the Cowboys. Panthers, Bucks, I think the Bucks take it. I just think the Panthers are really, really, really bad. I'm probably going to pick everybody against the Panthers for the rest of the way. Lions, Saints. The Saints' defense is really good. The Lions don't have a defense. They are coming off of a mini-bye, but it is in New Orleans, and New Orleans is renowned for their home field advantage. So they also just came off of a bye the week before. I have them beating the Falcons that week. I think they will carry that momentum, go back home, get healthy. I think they will beat the Lions, the Eagles, and the 49ers. I think this one's really tough, and I think it's a very important game for the 49ers to win. They're coming off of a mini-bye. It's a really tough. This one I don't feel very confident in because, like, anything can happen in the NFL, but I'm going to pick the 49ers. I think it's a huge win they need to get. I think they will take it. Next, Patriots and the Steelers. See, this is what I'm talking about. The Steelers' schedule is a joke. The Steelers are playing so many teams that just it's bad. It's really bad, but I think the Steelers' defense is just better than the Patriots' offense, and I think that'll be the reason that they win. I think the Steelers might be the biggest fraud of a 9-4 team that we've ever seen, but they're 9-4 in my scenario here. This one, I think this will be a very exciting game. Jacksonville versus the Browns. I have no idea what to really expect out of the quarterback for the Browns. If it was Deshaun Watson, I don't know how much different it would be. Their defense is so good. But I'm going to pick the Jags for this matchup. I think it'll be a really tough win for the Jags. I think it'll be ugly. I think people will hate it, but I think the Jags will come out on top. This one's a lot tougher than I think it should be for the Texans. The Jets' defense is so good. CJ Stroud is incredible. I don't know that the Texans have the arsenal to beat that defense, so I'm going to pick the Jets. Colts, Bengals. I think the Colts' defense is too good. I think it's way better than a Bengals team without Joe Burrow. So I think the Colts are the pick there. I think the Chiefs are better than the Bills. The Bills, kind of like the Dolphins in a way. Like, when they play teams above 500, they just lose. Like, they're not doing too hot against, like, actually good teams. Even bad teams. Like, they lost to the Patriots. They should have lost to the Giants, but the refs just said, hey, we feel bad. Here's some nonsense. The Bills are an enigma this year, but I don't think they're good enough to beat the Chiefs, especially at home, even coming off of a bye. They've lost to the Chiefs a bunch in the playoffs. I don't think that's going to change here. I think the Chiefs are going to win. I think the Broncos beat the Chargers, especially because, this is week 14. This is a couple weeks from now. And, anything can change. Anything can happen. But I don't know that the Chargers timeline, I don't know that they have enough people coming back off of injury. And even if they did, they might have fired their coach by now. They could be in They could be in panic mode. I think the Broncos' defense will be too much for them. I think the Broncos win, yeah. The Titans, Dolphins, I think the Dolphins are better. I don't think it's particularly close either. That's all I have to say about that. Rams, Ravens, easily. I think the Ravens are, honestly, in my personal opinion, I think the Ravens are the best team in the NFL right now. I think the Ravens are an insanely good team. And the thing is, right, the thing with the NFL, there's only 18 weeks to a season. And not all of those weeks you're even playing. There's 17 games in an NFL season. That is not a lot. That is not a lot of games. And there's so much parity in the NFL. Even the bad teams can win sometimes. That's why the Panthers have a win. That's why the Patriots have 2 wins. Like, even the bad teams can pull wins. The Cardinals beat the Cowboys earlier this year. So again, there's a lot of parity in the NFL. Anything can happen. And you look at the Ravens, and I say, oh, I think they're the best team in the NFL. And they've had a loss or two that was really bad. But you know, that just happens sometimes. Sometimes you lose. It's not the biggest deal in the world. But I think the Ravens are really, really good. I don't think the Raiders are. I don't think the Raiders are very good. Despite this being in LA, or not LA, in Las Vegas, both teams coming off of a bye, I think the Vikings need it more. I think the Vikings have more injuries. I think the Raiders are worse. I think their quarterback... I don't know that their quarterback is better than anybody the Vikings have, despite the Vikings losing Kirk Cousins. I don't think their defense is better. Individually, they do have a player that's better than anybody on the Vikings, but as a unit, I don't think the Raiders are better, so I'm taking the Vikings. Over here, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus the Atlanta Falcons. I don't feel good about either of these teams. I think if I have to pick one of them, I think I'm just going to pick Baker again. I like Baker Mayfield better than the quarterback on the Falcons. I think the Falcons do have the better offensive weapons, but again, their coach doesn't know how to use them. I think I feel okay about taking the Buccaneers. The Lions and the Bears is another one that's really, really tough because we just saw this matchup this week, and the Bears were coming off of a mini-bye, which means they had Thursday night football the week before, so they had some extra rest. But they really just blew that game. And I think part of me, now they're coming off of a bye, and I had them losing a couple games. I had them losing a couple games. I think because of the last game they played against them, really just tells me anybody can beat the Lions. I'm honestly going to pick the Bears. I'm going to pick the Bears. And I think this might be controversial. I think a lot of people will accuse me of being a hater. But I think I'm just going to pick the Bears. I think they'll be pissed off about the last game. They might have fired their coach by now. And sometimes when you fire a coach, a team starts to do better just because people aren't prepared for it. Yada, yada, yada. I'm going to go controversial. I'm going to pick the Bears. I'm going to pick the Saints over the Panthers. I think the Panthers aren't good. I'm going to take the 49ers over the Seahawks. I think I had them... Yeah, I had the Seahawks beating them at home. I'm going to have the 49ers beating them at home this time. I'm going to take the Cowboys over the Eagles. The Cowboys are at home. They're coming off of a mini-bye. Cowboys' defense is crazy good. I know they played earlier this year. At least I think they did. Yeah, they played earlier this year. The Eagles won by 5. The Eagles were at home going into their bye week. I think Dallas is going to take the win. They're at home this time. I feel okay about that. I do really like the Cowboys' defense. Dak Prescott is playing far better than he was earlier in the year, so I think it could be close, but I'm going to take the Cowboys. I'm going to take the Packers over the Giants. I just do not trust the Giants at all. I don't think they're the worst team in the NFL. But I don't trust them. They also lost their quarterback for the year. It's kind of a trend this season, honestly. Everybody's losing their quarterbacks, so again, anything can happen, but I don't think I trust the Giants all that much. Even though they are coming off of bye, they are at home. I just think they're a worse team. Not by a lot, but by enough that I don't think they'll win that game. Going into week 15 now. Chargers over the Raiders. I think this is honestly a coin flip. Like, I think, they're both kind of out of the mix at this point. I think in a scenario like this, I don't think either team has a very good defense. I don't know what the offensive weapons are going to look like for the Chargers, because they just keep getting hurt. They might have fired their coach by now. The Raiders already fired their coach earlier this year. They're not going to fire the interim. I think the Chargers take it by a little bit. I'm not too sure. But what can you do? The Steelers and the Colts. Did I have the Steelers in the list? Yeah, okay. The Steelers and the Colts. I think this is going to be the most disgusting game we've seen all season. I think this game is going to be terrible. And for that reason, I think the Steelers will win. The Steelers love to win very ugly games. They do it all the time. Somehow the Steelers are 10-4 in this scenario. But yeah, they're coming off of a little bit of a bye week, this is gonna be a terrible game. The Dolphins versus the Jets. I'm gonna take the Dolphins again. And the thing with the Dolphins, I think they've had a lot of trouble. They've had some questions in a couple of their games, but I think in the AFC East, I think they're easily the best team, and I don't think it's particularly close. It does, of course, this is so far into the future. This is a month from now. Anything can happen. I've said that over and over. I think the Dolphins will still be better than the Jets at this point. I don't expect Aaron Rodgers to be back. But yeah, it's a very difficult choice in some regards, because the Jets' defense is still elite. It is so good. But offensively, do they have enough to overcome the Dolphins' defense, which is a little bit above average at times? I don't think so. I think the Texans are better than the Titans. I don't even have to think about that. I think the Ravens are better than the Jags. Don't really have to think about that. I think this has the potential to be a very fun game, but we'll see. I think the Chiefs will beat the Patriots, and it won't be close. I think the Cleveland Browns will absolutely gobsmack the Chicago Bears. I think the Broncos will beat the Lions. I think their defense is way too good to negate the fact. The thing with the Lions, right? The Detroit Lions have a good offense. They have a very good offense, but they just don't have a defense. They don't have it, especially in the secondary, right? Especially in the secondary, they do not have a defense. It just doesn't exist. It's not there. We've seen it every single game. Anybody, even backups, have been scoring on this guy, on the Detroit Lions. So it's I don't think that they're as good as people say. I think they've had a phenomenal start to the year. I don't see where, they do anything exceptionally. I don't think anybody in the North, in the NFC North, I don't think anybody there is really, exceptional at anything. I think some of it, too, comes down to the NFC North, collectively, has one of the easiest schedules in the NFL, because they play the NFC South and the NFC North. So, I don't know. It's tough, but I wouldn't be surprised to see the Broncos win. I think the line, if Joe Burrow was still playing, right? This is huge. This is a huge what-if scenario. If Joe Burrow was still playing, I think they beat the Vikings. But I think the Vikings will beat the Cincinnati Bengals without Joe Burrow, just because the Bengals, even with Joe Burrow, have lost some pretty ugly games. I don't think the Bengals really have depth. I don't think they have the leadership they need. Excuse me. Goodness. I don't think they have the leadership to beat with teams that have nothing to lose, like the Vikings, without Joe Burrow. So I don't know. Like, I think this could still be close because I think the Bengals are at about the level of what I think the Vikings are this year, even without Joe Burrow. Because um, it's not like the Vikings are playing like objectively bad teams like the Raiders. Um, they're on bye this week, or the Bears, right? They're playing the Bengals, and I think the Bengals are about average. I think both of these teams and the Lions, I think, are just about average NFL teams. I don't think any of these three do anything exceptionally well, especially because there's so many injuries with these two. But I don't know. It's tough, but I think the Vikings do win by like 3 points. I think the Cowboys will absolutely dumpster the Bills. Like the Bills have the problem with the Bills, they've just lost so many important pieces for the year, right? Like for the year, they're missing so much defensively. They don't have a lot of depth on the offense. Josh Allen has a tendency to make some really poor decisions. So I don't know. I don't think they can contend with the Cowboys at all in the NFC. I think this is where the Panthers finally get their second win against the Atlanta Falcons. I think the Falcons might have fired their coach by now. The Falcons are just so mismanaged. They've got a lot of issues. I think that the Panthers at this point basically guarantee themselves. Well, the Panthers don't actually have their first round pick. They traded it to Chicago to move up to number one earlier this year in April for the draft. So they don't have their own first round pick. They don't have anything to lose. The Falcons might be trying to tank to get a better pick. I think the Panthers get their second win here. This one's tough. I think the Packers, just because it's at home in December, gets really cold. Tampa Bay's in Florida. I think the Packers do beat the Bucks. It might even be snowing by then. Who knows? I think the Saints beat the Giants. I think the 49ers beat the Cardinals, and this is going to be a murder. This might be something like 65-10 or something. This might be something hideous like that. But who knows? Right now, in this current moment, at this point in time that I'm recording this, I think the San Francisco 49ers are so much better than the Cardinals. We have two bottom feeders here fighting it out, duking it out. They'd both be eliminated by now. Neither one really has anything to play for. They're probably just going to be tanking. The Rams have so many issues. They finally have a first-round pick this year, I think. Yeah, they do at number 11 at this point. I think they might just tank and try to get a better pick to go up and get a quarterback. So that only moves them up one spot, but I think they might be tanking at this point. I think the Eagles beat the Seahawks. Again, I don't know what the status of Geno Smith is, so who knows, but I think the Eagles, regardless, are the better team. Week 16 now. We're almost there. We're almost at the end. But in Week 16, the Steelers, again, are benefiting from the schedule more than anybody else that we've ever seen. This is frankly ridiculous and disgusting, and I hate it. And I absolutely hate it. The Vikings do kind of benefit from their schedule being bad, but whatever. I think the Steelers beat the Bengals. I think the Bills beat the Chargers, just barely. Not that I don't think it really matters at this point because they're both kind of out of it around here. The Browns. I think the Browns beat the Texans. Broncos over the Patriots. Chiefs over Raiders. Let's see here. Washington and the Jets. I think the Jets might take it just because I think the Commanders might be tanking at this point too. They just can't out tank the Rams the week before, so they'll try extra hard to tank against the Jets. Colts versus the Falcons. I'll take the Colts. Seahawks over Titans. I'll take the Seahawks. Jags over Bucks. I honestly kind of want to take the Bucks. I don't know why. I can't justify why. I want to take the Bucks, but part of me says the Bucks. So who knows? Maybe I'm biased because I just like Baker Mayfield a lot, but nobody will ever know. Cowboys, I think, will beat the Dolphins, and I think it will be kind of disgusting. I think the Ravens will beat the 49ers. I think this could be either the best game of the year or the worst game of the year, depending on who decides to show up. So we'll see how that one goes. I am very excited for this one, though. I will circle that on my calendar. Over here in the NFC, the Rams are, at this point in the year, I don't think they're playing for anything. So we'll take the Saints. The Packers will beat the Carolina Panthers. I think the Vikings will split with the Detroit Lions, and it'll depend on who's playing at home. And in this scenario, the Minnesota Vikings are playing at home, so I think they'll beat the Lions at home, and then they play them 2 weeks from now, and they'll lose. I think the Bears and Cardinals, I think the Cardinals might beat the Bears at this point. I don't think it affects their draft position all that much if they lose. Oh no, it gives them the number 1 overall pick. Never mind. They might just try and lose to try and get that pick. That moves them from 3-1, and it moves the Bears to 8. It moves the Bears to 8. Look at that. From 5 to 8, and then the Cardinals go up to number 1. That is, in this dreamland that we're living in the Wanderers universe, where this is how the schedule goes, that is certainly a possibility. Anyways, I think the Philadelphia Eagles will beat the Giants quite handily as well. The Giants, at this point in the year, I don't think anybody's even going to watch that game, to be honest with you. Week 17, this is where things get good. This is where playoff implications are at their highest. The New York Football Jets versus the Cleveland Browns. I think the Browns might take it by just a little bit. I think the Colts will beat the Raiders. Ravens over Dolphins. Now, this is where it's like, are the Bills going to try and push to get in to the AFC playoffs and try and, outduel the Jags? Because they're not getting the 6th seed. They're out of that contention. They're 7-9 in this scenario. They're trying to get to the 7 seed. They could be playing for everything at this point, so I think they will beat the Patriots finally. They lost to them earlier in the year, and it was a disgusting game. They should not have lost, but they played horribly. I think the Texans are better than the Titans. Chiefs over Bengals. Chargers, Broncos. This is another thing, too, where it's like the Broncos are right here. Right, they're the 9 seed. They have to be top 7. I think it's another one where it's like they're going to try and go and get in. And is it going to matter? No, I don't think so, because I think the Jaguars are going to beat the Panthers, and then it's over. And then it doesn't matter for them at that point. The Steelers over the Seahawks. I like the Seahawks a little bit better. Not a lot, but a little bit better than the Steelers. The Lions versus the Cowboys. This might be where everything goes wrong for the Detroit Lions. Honestly, this might be where it all goes wrong. Because if they lose, like in this scenario, in this world that I've built, if the Lions lose to the Cowboys, they're done. Their season's over. I think. The math might prove me wrong here in a second, but I think if they lose to the Cowboys, it's just the end. The Eagles over the Cardinals. I honestly don't think the Detroit Lions even match up with the Cowboys at all. Like, I don't think it's close. I think the Cowboys are like infinitely better than the Detroit Lions. I don't think they're good enough to win a Super Bowl, but I think they're better than the Lions. Rams over Giants. Both of these teams will be tanking at this point. I think the Rams will win. The 49ers will take victory over the Commanders. I will take the Bucs over the Saints this time. The Bucs are at home. They still have a defense that's pretty good. Falcons over the Bears. This one is tough because for the last couple seasons, the Minnesota Vikings have split with the Packers. And they already beat the Packers earlier in the year in Lambeau, in Green Bay. And at this point, they're 10-5 in this world. They're 4-0 in the division. I think it's a very important game for them to win, even though they are ahead. Will they do it? I have no idea. This one's really tough. This one's really, really tough. I'm going to take them just because I think they're better. I think they're a more complete game. I think they're going to win by 3 points. I don't think it'll be very good. I think it'll be pretty disgusting, but I think they do get the win there. The Detroit Lions, they will beat the Minnesota Vikings at home. It's not going to be a good game or anything, but, they will do that. It's another thing, too, where the Vikings have split with the Lions for a long time, even when the Lions were kind of bad. I'll take Jets over Patriots, Dolphins over Bills, Ravens over the Steelers. Does it matter if the Browns lose at this point? No, I don't think it does. So I think they're probably going to be resting starters at that point and just try to stay healthy and go into the playoffs at full strength. I think that's what'll happen there in this dream world that I've built for the NFL playoffs. The Texans will beat the Colts. The Jaguars will beat the Titans. Because again, at this point, I don't think they're really going to be playing for much. Because I don't know that the Colts can even get in. Chiefs over Chargers. Broncos over Raiders. The 10-7 Broncos. I mean, if this happens, they still don't get in. So, the Jaguars could take the day off and try to get healthy, but I don't think they will. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Panthers. In this scenario, the Buccaneers are 9-7. The Detroit Lions are 9-8. And I think if the Panthers win, if the Panthers win, they get in. And the Panthers might. Get in. It's tough. Because they'd need. The Panthers would need a lot, I think, to beat the Bucs. But in this scenario, right, if the Panthers win, then the Lions are in. If the Panthers lose, the Lions are out. Do I think the Lions are going to miss the playoffs? No. Do I think this is exactly how they'll get into the playoffs? Not particularly. But I don't think the Buccaneers are a playoff team over the Lions. So, I don't exactly think the Panthers are going to beat the Bucs, but for the sake of who I want to see in the playoffs, because this is who I think we're going to see in the playoffs on both sides, pretty easily, I would argue. So I just need that to line up with, Anyways, Cowboys over the Commanders, Eagles over the Giants. This game doesn't matter too much, I don't think. Yeah. We'll take the Packers over the Bears because the Bears want to tank. Seahawks over the Cardinals. And the 49ers over the Rams. This is where it gets fun. Into the wild card round. Now, the NFL playoffs. I don't know how this differs from other sports, but in the NFL playoffs, you have 4 divisions. Okay, we have the East, the West, the North, and the South. Over here we have the West, the North, the East, and the South. And whoever has the best record in each division will win the division and have a direct path into the playoffs. The first seed in both of these conferences. The first seed gets a 1-week bye, so they do not have to play in wild card round. And there are 3 wild card teams. So you have 4 division winners for each division, and then the 3 best records from non-division winning teams. So in this scenario, we have the Cleveland Browns as the 5th seed versus the division-winning Houston Texans as the 4th seed. And I think this is probably the toughest matchup for the Texans, but I do think they will get it done. Then we have the 6th seed Jacksonville Jaguars versus the 3 seed Dolphins. The 3rd seed, I should say. I think this is also a really tough matchup for the Dolphins. I am going to take the... I think I'm going to take the Jacksonville Jaguars, and then easily I'm going to take the Ravens over the Steelers, because the Steelers just have such a record, or such a schedule advantage where they play a bunch of teams that suck. On this side, I think the Cowboys are better than the Saints. I think the Vikings are better than the Seahawks. Not by a lot, but enough to win. I think this is the worst possible matchup for the Lions to get, so I think the 49ers are better, and significantly so. I think the 49ers are better than the Vikings. I think this is really tough, because I think these two will split in the regular season, and the Cowboys have had so many struggles in the playoffs. I think the Eagles are going to win, because I think the Eagles will want to get back to the Super Bowl, and I think they will play better for that reason. I think the Chiefs are better than the Jaguars. I think the Baltimore Ravens are better than the Texans. I think the Baltimore Ravens are better than the Chiefs, and this one is a coin flip. I think both of these teams are very good. I think San Francisco stumbled a little bit during the middle of the season, but I should mention one of those stumbles. They lost to the Vikings earlier this year, but the Vikings lost Kirk Cousins, and without Kirk Cousins, I don't think they will repeat and beat the 49ers. The 49ers also went and traded for some defensive help that they did not have against the Vikings, so I think in this scenario, they lose the rematch. And then I think the Eagles will beat the 49ers, and then we'll have a Bird Bowl, and I think the Baltimore Ravens will win, because I think the Baltimore Ravens are the best team in the NFL at this very current moment when I'm recording this video after Sunday Night Football on Week 11. Of course, this could be very wrong. This could be horrendously wrong. By the time you watch this video, it could be 3 years from now and you call me a buffoon because somehow the Buccaneers just went on a run and, did a bunch of crazy nonsense. But anyways, this is my final bracket for the NFL season, the NFL playoffs. I thank you very much for watching, and I will speak with you again soon. Goodbye for now.